Hey everyone, Tankenstein here. In this video, I'll be reviewing the F-2A ADTW. This is a currently 13.0 BR in Air RB and 12.3 BR in Ground RB Rank 8 premium fighter in the Japanese Air Force's tech tree. The pack that it comes in currently costs $79.99 USD when not on sale, and comes with both 30 days of premium time and 3,000 golden eagles. With that said, in this video, I'll be going over everything that you need to know about this fighter, including its stats, how it plays, I'll give its strengths and weaknesses, I'll give you some scores in several key areas, and then I'll give my final recommendation and if I feel this vehicle is worth purchasing or not. With that said, if you like this kind of video, please consider subscribing, but without further ado, let's get into the review. Now to start, I'll place the stat card here on the side of the screen. Important things to know are its armament, its turn time, and its BR. Now for how it plays. If you think this vehicle looks like an F-16 and thus it must play like an F-16, well, you'd be kind of right, but not entirely. While the two planes look very similar, the F-2A ADTW, and really all F-2s for that matter, are decently larger than all F-16s, with the F-2 having a 25% greater wing area compared to the F-16, while also weighing around 3,000 pounds more, or about 10%. This is without any real thrust increase to cope with the additional size and weight, which means that the F-2A is somewhat noticeably slower than the F-16. While the F-2's performance is still largely fine, you may notice this more so beyond Mach 1, as the F-2 struggles to gain speed at low altitudes, again beyond Mach 1, while the F-16 still has a bit of performance left. This is even more pronounced when carrying ordnance heavier than your standard 8 air-to-air missiles, such as bombs or rockets. Regardless, the F-2A ADTW is still largely fine insofar as air combat is concerned, featuring up to 4 amazing AAM-3 IR-guided missiles, as well as up to 4 AIM-7M radar-guided missiles. Unfortunately, the ADTW lacks ARH missiles, otherwise known as Fox 3s, but it's also a lower BR due to the lack of them, which some people may prefer. Regardless, the close-range AAM-3s are, in my experience, the more reliable option of the two types of missiles that you can carry, though the AIM-7M is still fairly good and will get kills with some degree of consistency. This is both helped and hurt by the ADTW's radar, of which is great at initially picking up enemies, but loses them fairly quickly unless you're in ACM PD mode, which can be a pain. Even still, the ADTW is quite proficient at air-to-air combat with phenomenal maneuverability, still decent performance, and those amazing AAM-3 missiles. Because of these strengths, I would advise to use the AIM-7Ms first while getting closer to the enemy, switching to AAM-3s immediately thereafter. This will allow you to take full advantage of the excellent close-range dogfighting capability of the ADTW, while also making the most of your mid-range missiles, though I guess you could say the same about most planes between 11.0 and 13.0 BR. It just goes more so for the ADTW in my opinion. In a way, it functions almost like a more modern version of the older school close-range missile fighters, but with still some mid-range radar-guided capabilities. Now for close air support, the ADTW is a mixed bag. On one hand, it has the fantastic JAAQ-2 targeting pod that enables distant magnification and Gen 3 thermals, whereas on the other hand, it has no proper ATGMs. Sure, you can kinda make the ASM-1 and ASM-2 work against tanks, but they require a careful dance between locking onto moving ground targets with your radar, being relatively low in altitude so that the missiles don't overshoot their target, and getting very lucky for them to even work, whereas basic AGM-65Bs are far better as of current for getting kills. Many times better in fact, though the ASMs could be amazing once we start seeing higher BR ships in a few years, if that ever happens, or if there is ever a practical way to get them to consistently work against ground targets without having to jump through hoops. Weird and possibly buggy ASMs aside, the ADTW still features a fairly good, though not incredibly impressive anti-ground loadout, with up to 4 2,000-pound GPS-guided bombs, up to 8 500-pound GPS-guided bombs, up to 6 2,000-pound unguided bombs, up to 12 500-pound unguided bombs, and a max of 343 Mighty Mouse rockets, and even up to 24 Zunis. This means that, while none of its ordnance truly tracks their target with any sort of consistency, which is a shame, the ADTW still has some standoff capabilities via its JDAMs, and can even get up close to the enemy to unleash a very respectable and somewhat large amount of unguided weaponry. Now with all that being said, let's get into its strengths and weaknesses, and first for its strengths. It has fantastic AAM-3 air-to-air missiles that are very maneuverable, feature IRCCM, and track very well. They're also smokeless, making them difficult for the enemy to see. Second, this vehicle has outstanding maneuverability. It regularly pulls 13 to 14 Gs or even more. Third, it has a fantastic roll rate. For its 4th strength, it can carry 8 missiles in total, which is fairly good for a premium at this BR. For its 5th strength, the radar is quite good, but it is constantly in some form of TWS mode, which can make targeting a bit annoying. Beyond this, it features a very good 20mm cannon that will shred both aircraft and ground targets. For its 7th strength, it has good anti-ground ordnance options that include GPS-guided bombs, up to 12,000 pounds of dumb bombs, up to 342 Mighty Mouse rockets, which I did say 343 before, it is 342, and both the ASM-1 and ASM-2 anti-shipping missiles, of which can be utilized versus ground targets, at least in theory. As of right now, my experience at least, I've only managed to land a single kill versus a ground target in a test flight only, despite expending dozens of ASMs in both live matches and test flights. The guided weapons work very well with the JAAQ-2 targeting pod, at least insofar as GPS guided weapons are concerned, and this targeting pod has Gen 3 thermals, as well as excellent magnification and tracking capabilities. And finally, this vehicle features premium RP and SL bonuses. Now for its weaknesses. First, while not terrible, the performance on the F-2A ADTW leaves something to be desired. It feels like a bigger, heavier F-16 with no additional thrust to compensate. Second, AIM-7Ms, while not poor, are only semi-active radar homing, and don't maneuver as well or as quickly as similar BR semi-active radar homing missiles, such as the R-27ER, which is pretty much better in every single way compared to the AIM-7M, outside of weight. Third, this vehicle lacks proper AGMs, such as the AGM-65 Mavericks, which can frustrate some players looking for more complete or versatile anti-ground loadouts. The ASMs, as of current, primarily only work against ships and, in my experience, see their best results when firing near ground or sea level. The GMTI mode of the radar can be used to track moving ground targets, but in my experience, this is very iffy and has a relatively short range and easily loses lock. Plus, of course, it only works against moving ground targets properly, which essentially takes stationary vehicles off the table. All of this means that the ASMs can get kills against ground, but it is likely not going to be common at all, at least how everything is currently set up. And finally, its current BR puts the ADTW against plenty of enemies with more advanced mid to long range missiles, which creates huge matchup issues. Now, with all that being said, let's get into how I score this vehicle. And first, for dogfighting and ARB, I give it a 6.25 out of 10. The big issue here is the current BR of the F-2A ADTW mixed with its lack of ARH missiles, aka Fox 3s. While these aren't a complete necessity at this BR, as the F-2A ADTW will fairly often find itself in down tiers, such missiles are far superior to the AIM-7Ms that equip the ADTW. If nothing else, the AAM-3 IR-guided missiles are fantastic for close-range fighting and will be a large percentage of your kills. Aside from this, while not poor, the performance on this aircraft is a bit worse than the F-16, which I consider to set the bar for good performance at this BR. Otherwise, the maneuverability is fantastic on the ADTW, and it carries a good, though not amazing, 120 countermeasures in total, along with up to 8 air-to-air missiles. This all makes for a vehicle that is very good in air battles right now, largely on the strength of the AAM-3, and is primed to be much better if and when BRs at top tier are farther decompressed in the future. Compared to another currently 13.0 BR premium jet, the JA-37 DI-F-21, the ADTW lacks its ARH missiles that the F-21 can carry, but it beats it in pretty much every other way, including in terms of performance, maneuverability, IR-guided missiles, and then some. While the ADTW lacks what so many people would consider to be necessary at this current BR insofar as ARH missiles are concerned, I feel that it largely makes up for it in many other ways. Basically, the AAM-3 and the maneuverability are both putting the ADTW on their backs. Now for close air support, I give it a 5.25 out of 10. This one depends on a lot of factors. First, as I write this, the SPAA in War Thunder is extremely powerful and will not only shoot down the F-2A at very long ranges, but it can also shoot down your bombs, making them useless. Because of this, almost any aircraft without some sort of stealth capability or difficult to shoot down ordnance becomes an expensive and wasteful use of spawn points. Second, again as I write this video, the ASM-1 and ASM-2 missiles have extremely limited capabilities and usefulness. If they end up being consistently useful for ground battles, the ADTW can end up being an amazing CAS aircraft. If not, it can still carry 342 Mighty Mouse rockets, up to 12,000 pounds of bombs, or between 4 and 8 JDAM GPS guided bombs. These are still good loadouts, but JDAMs do not actively track their targets and will simply do their best to guide themselves to wherever you initially place them. This makes them very good for destroying SPAA, as they tend to not move much, or tanks that are defending an area, but that's about all. In general, the overall overall ordnance weight, excellent JAAQ targeting pod, and still useful munitions makes the F-2A ADTW into a fairly capable, though not outstanding, close air support aircraft. It does, however, have tons of upside if the ASMs ever become useful for anti-ground work. Now overall, I give it a 5.6 out of 10. I'm giving the ADTW a 5.6 out of 10 as something in the back of my mind is telling me that I'm giving it just a touch too much credit in terms of air battles. Even still, the ADTW is a very good aircraft that can more or less do whatever you need with little issue. Sure, it lacks Fox 3s, but I feel that including them would make this a higher BR, and with likely inevitable decompression coming in the future, I can't imagine that the F-2A ADTW will be at a disadvantage in this regard for all too long. But still, to be clear, the score that I'm giving the ADTW is based on how it performs now, not how I could see it performing at some point in the future that may or may not even happen. Regardless, when combined with a fairly good close air support capability, the F-2A is an overall versatile vehicle with tons of upside for the future depending on how and when War Thunder is changed in the coming updates. Now with that said, do I recommend the purchase of this vehicle? For right now, only when it's on sale and only if you don't mind a lack of Fox 3 missiles, at least at this BR. Personally, I mostly like this vehicle, as it has great maneuverability and excellent close range AAM-3 missiles, but there are enough problems with it that turn me away from it for the time being. These issues are its current BR and the state of BR decompression in War Thunder at top tier, its radar that almost feels a little bit buggy even though it isn't, and its questionably decent ASM missiles. Specifically, the radar seemingly is much less able to lock onto enemies at a range after one or two have already been locked onto. As for the ASMs, they're powerful, but they're still much more likely to either sail over their target and then loop around them until they run out of speed, or they slam into the ground nearby the target, at least as of the time of me writing this review and again in my experience with them. Even still, the ADTW has enough weapons and capabilities that can compete in most scenarios. It just doesn't feel entirely complete, however. Perhaps if and when these things are fixed, if they are truly bugged, I'll revisit this aircraft, but for now, it's decent enough for a 50% off sale if you need to grind out the Japanese air tech tree, but the FA-18C premiums available in other tech trees are better than the ADTW is relative to BR, at least currently. So for now, I do not recommend the F-2A ADTW for general purchase, though large sales are somewhat acceptable. I also do not give it my Tankenstein seal of approval. I feel like this plane can and should be more than it currently is, and while it is still pretty good, it ends up feeling like it's missing something, to me at least. Now with that said, thank you all so much for watching. If you don't mind, please consider liking this video if you enjoyed it, and commenting to let me know what you think of the review and of this plane. Also, please consider subscribing if you like content like this. But either way, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.